The stars had always been cold and silent, but on that day, they witnessed something that would change the galaxy forever. Admiral Kethra stood on the command deck of his massive warship, watching 17 planet cracker missiles race toward the blue and green world below. Earth, home to 8 billion humans, had exactly 9 minutes left to exist. The Valorian Dominion had ruled this part of the galaxy for 2,000 years. They were tall beings with gray skin and 4 arms, and they believed themselves to be the rightful masters of all intelligent life. When humans had first reached the stars 3 centuries ago, the Valorians had watched with mild interest. When humans spread to 47 colony worlds in less than 300 years, that interest turned to concern. And when human diplomats began speaking of equal rights and representation in the Galactic Council, concern became fear. Fear among the Valorians always led to violence. Kethris watched the missiles enter Earth's atmosphere. There was no warning sent, no declaration of war, no chance for surrender. The Dominion had learned long ago that the cleanest solutions were the quickest ones. In a flash of white light that could be seen from Mars, Earth ceased to exist. 8 billion voices went silent in a single heartbeat. The Admiral turned away from the viewport and addressed his officers. Send word to the Council. The human problem has been resolved. Begin cleanup operations on their remaining colonies. 600 light-years away, Commander Lisa Morgan felt the universe change. She was aboard the Wanderer, a deep space research vessel that had been studying strange energy readings near a dying star. When the emergency transmission came through, she was in her small cabin, reading a letter from her mother back on Earth. The message was simple and devastating. Earth destroyed. Valorian attack. No survivors. All human ships ordered to surrender. Lisa sat very still for a long moment. Her mother, her father, her 2 brothers, everyone she had ever known on her homeworld, gone in an instant. The letter in her hands, written just 3 weeks ago, is now a message from the dead. She allowed herself 30 seconds of grief. Then she stood up, straightened her uniform, and walked to the bridge. Her crew of 62 people looked at her with eyes full of shock and tears. Most of them had family on Earth. All of them understood that their lives had just changed forever. "You have all heard the transmission," Lisa said. Her voice was steady, though her heart was breaking. Earth is gone. The Valorians will hunt every human settlement in the galaxy. They will not stop until our species is extinct. Navigator Samuel Price, a quiet man with kind eyes, looked up from his console. "What do we do, Commander?" "We survive," Lisa replied. "And then we fight." The Wanderer was not a military ship. It carried no weapons beyond basic meteor defense systems. Its crew were scientists, engineers, and explorers. But they were also human, and humans had faced extinction before. They had survived ice ages and plagues, wars and famines. They had clawed their way from caves to the stars through nothing but determination and the refusal to give up. Lisa gave her orders. They would run silent, avoiding all known shipping routes. They would warn whatever human colonies they could reach, and they would find others who had survived the initial attack. They were not alone. Across the vast emptiness of space, other human ships received the same terrible news. Mining vessels working the asteroid belts of distant systems, cargo haulers making their slow journeys between colonies, science teams studying alien worlds, and 3 military frigates that had been on patrol in the outer territories when Earth died. In total, perhaps 8,000 humans remained alive among the stars. They were scattered across hundreds of light years, without communication, without leadership, without hope. The Valorian Dominion expected them to scatter and fade away like so many conquered species before them. The Galactic Council received news of Earth's destruction with quiet approval. The Valorians had done what needed to be done. Humans had been too ambitious, too aggressive, too unwilling to accept their proper place in the galactic order. Their elimination was unfortunate, but necessary for the stability of civilized space. Other species heard the news differently. The Kethmari, a reptilian race that had barely survived their own near extinction at Valorian hands a century earlier, remembered what it felt like to watch their homeworld burn. The Orinai, small beings who lived in the shadows, and knew more secrets than any other species, began to pay very close attention to what the human survivors would do next. Even the proud Valorians, ancient enemies of the Dominion, wondered if perhaps they had underestimated the young species from the third planet of an unremarkable yellow star. Lisa. Morgan guided the wanderer through the darkness between stars. Her crew worked in shifts, sleeping when they could, crying when they had to, but always moving forward. After 9 days of hard travel, they reached Kepler Station, small human outpost on the edge of explored space. The station was crowded with refugees. 3 other ships had arrived before them, carrying survivors from 2 different colonies. The Valorian cleanup fleets had been efficient and brutal. New Chicago was gone. Prosperity was gone. 7 other human worlds had been burned to ash in the days following Earth's destruction, but not everyone had been killed. Some had escaped in the chaos. Some had been off-world when the attacks came. And some, like Lisa and her crew, had simply been lucky enough to be far away when the universe fell apart in the main assembly hall of Kepler Station. 300 humans gathered to decide their future. They were scientists and soldiers, miners and merchants, families with children, and elderly couples who had hoped to spend their final years watching stars they would never reach. Lisa stood before them and spoke words that would echo through history. The Valorians believe they have destroyed us. They think that by killing our world they have killed our spirit. They are wrong. She looked out at the tired, frightened faces before her. We are still here. We are scattered and few, but we are not broken. We have lost everything except each other, and that means we have nothing left to fear. The Dominion has made us into ghosts, so let us haunt them. Let us show them that humanity cannot be murdered in silence. Let us make them understand that they have made the worst mistake in the history of their empire. An old man in the front row raised his hand. How? We have no fleet, no army, no resources. How can we fight the most powerful empire in the galaxy? Lisa smiled, and there was something cold and determined in her eyes. We do what humans have always done. We adapt. We learn. We refuse to die. And when the time is right, we remind the galaxy why they should have been afraid of us from the beginning. That night, in the cold darkness of Kepler Station, the remnant was born. They were not yet an army. They were not yet a threat. But they were alive, and they were angry. They had just begun to fight. The Valorians had killed Earth. They had no idea what they had awakened. 6 months had passed since Earth became dust in memory. The Valorian Dominion celebrated their victory with parades and speeches, praising Admiral Kethros as the hero who had solved the human problem forever. Politicians spoke of a new era of peace and stability. Military commanders congratulated themselves on the efficiency of their genocide. They had no idea that death was coming for them. Lieutenant Commander Derek Holloway had been a patrol officer before the fall, commanding the small frigate Defiance on routine missions in the Outer Territories. He was a serious man in his early 40s, with short gray hair and eyes that had seen too much. When news of Earth's destruction reached him, he had not cried. He had simply looked at his crew and said, "Now we have work to do." For 4 months, Derek had hidden his ship in the debris field of a destroyed colony, scavenging weapons from the defense platforms that the Valorians had not bothered to finish destroying. The Defiance was never meant to be a warship. She was small and lightly armed, designed for escort duties and patrol work. But Derek had transformed her into something else entirely, now hiding in the dead zone of the Cygnus Reach. He waited for his prey. The Valorian patrol ship Triumphant dropped out of hyperspace exactly where Derek had predicted. The Dominion was arrogant. They used the same routes, the same schedules, the same procedures they had used for centuries. Why change what had always worked? No one had ever threatened them seriously. No one had ever given them reason to fear. Derek gave the order. The Defiance struck like a snake from the darkness. Her weapons, jury-rigged and unstable, but devastatingly powerful, tore through the Triumphant before the Valorian crew even understood they were under attack. In less than 2 minutes, the patrol ship was a spreading cloud of debris. Derek allowed himself a small, grim smile. One ship, one tiny victory. But it was a beginning. Word spread through the hidden networks that human survivors had established across neutral space. The ghost ships were fighting back. The dead were not quite dead after all. On the frozen moon of Ganymede Station, far from any shipping lanes, Dr. Patricia Lane worked in a laboratory carved from ice and desperation. She was a small woman with wild brown hair and the distracted look of someone whose mind was always somewhere else. Before the fall, she had been a theoretical physicist, one of the best in human space. Her work on exotic matter had earned her 3 major scientific prizes and a comfortable research position. And Earth. Now she worked 18 hours a day, sleeping on a cot beside her equipment, eating only when her assistants forced food into her hands. She was building something that had never existed before, something that would change the nature of war itself. The Valorians used standard hyperspace corridors, she explained to the council of surviving ship captains who had gathered in secret. Her voice was hoarse from too little sleep and too much talking. Their technology is advanced, yes, but it follows predictable rules. When a ship enters hyperspace, it creates a tunnel through dimensions that normal matter cannot touch. If we could collapse that tunnel while a ship was inside it, Captain Nathan Cole, the youngest of the council members at barely 30 years old, leaned forward with interest. What would happen? Patricia's eyes gleamed with something that might have been excitement or madness. The ship would be torn apart on a molecular level. It would cease to exist in any meaningful way. And the best part is, they would never see it coming. They would never even know what hit them. Lisa Morgan, now recognized as the leader of what they called the Remnant Fleet, studied the schematics Patricia had drawn. They were complex and elegant, the work of a brilliant mind pushed beyond its normal limits by grief and rage. How many of these weapons can we build? With our current resources? Patricia ran her fingers through her tangled hair. 3, maybe 4. The materials are rare, and the engineering is almost impossible. But I can do it. I know I can do it. Lisa nodded slowly. Then we build 4, and we make every shot count. The remnant fleet was growing, though slowly. More survivors found their way to the hidden bases. More ships joined the cause. And most importantly, they were not alone. The Keth Mari, the reptilian race that had nearly been exterminated by the Dominion a century ago, reached out through secret channels. They offered sanctuary, supplies, and the use of hidden shipyards that the Valorians had never found. Their hatred for the Dominion burned as hot as any humans. The Orionai came next. They were small beings who preferred shadows to light, and they possessed the most advanced stealth technology in the galaxy. They shared their designs freely, teaching human engineers how to make ships invisible to Valorian sensors. Why help us? Lisa asked the Orionai ambassador, a being so wrapped in shadows that she could barely see its face. Because we remember what the Valorians did to our ancestors, the ambassador replied in a voice like rustling leaves. Because we have waited 500 years for someone brave enough to fight back. Because we believe you might actually win. Lisa was not sure she shared that belief, but she accepted the help gratefully. The months passed. Patricia Lane completed her first hyperspace disruptor, then her second. Derek Holloway trained a new generation of pilots in the art of ambush warfare. Nathan Cole, who had proven himself to be a natural leader, took command of a small squadron that specialized in hit-and-run attacks on Valorian supply lines. And Lisa Morgan planned. She spent hours studying Valorian tactics, Valorian politics, Valorian weaknesses. She memorized the names of their admirals and the locations of their bases. She learned everything she could about the empire that had murdered her world. We cannot defeat them in open battle, she told her council. We do not have the ships or the numbers for that. But we do not need to defeat them. We only need to make them bleed. We need to make conquest so expensive that they cannot afford to continue. We need to make every human life they take cost them 10 Valorian ships. Nathan Cole smiled his cold, determined smile. I like the way you think, Commander. The first anniversary of Earth's destruction passed quietly. There were no ceremonies, no speeches, no public mourning. The survivors simply paused in their work, remembered what they had lost, and then returned to their tasks with renewed determination. But in the secret places where humans gathered, A promise was spoken. They would not forget. They would not forgive. And they would not stop fighting until the Valorian Dominion understood the price of their crime. The galaxy thought humanity was finished. The galaxy was about to learn just how wrong it was. The Valorian supply depot at Theta Carani was considered impossible to attack. 6 massive battle stations orbited the central hub, each one bristling with weapons that could destroy a small moon. 40 warships patrolled the surrounding space at all times. From this depot, the Dominion supplied their entire military expansion into what they now called the former human territories. Admiral Kethris himself had come to inspect the facility. He walked through the storage bays with his 4 arms clasped behind his back, examining the wealth of plundered human technology. Computers, medical equipment, works of art, even personal belongings taken from the burned colonies. All of it would be studied, cataloged, and eventually sold to collectors who valued rare artifacts from extinct species. The Admiral paused before a display case containing a small wooden box. Inside was a simple golden ring, the kind humans exchanged during their bonding ceremonies. He did not know that this ring had belonged to Lisa Morgan's mother, taken from the ruins of her family home. He did not know that Lisa had seen images of her mother's possessions being loaded onto Valorian cargo ships. He did not know that she had sworn to get that ring back. Along with everything else that Dominion had stolen, he would learn soon enough. The attack began with ghosts. 20 automated drones, each one broadcasting the sensor signature of a full-sized warship, emerged from hyperspace on the far side of the system. The garrison commanders reacted exactly as Derek Holloway had predicted. They sent the bulk of their patrol ships racing toward the threat, leaving the depot protected by only the battle stations and a handful of guards. For 3 weeks. For human ships had been hiding in the asteroid field near the depot. They had drifted there on minimal power, their crews surviving on recycled air and cold rations. Some of them had not seen daylight in a month. Some of them had nearly gone mad from the darkness and the waiting, but they had held on, because they knew that every second of suffering brought them closer to revenge. Derek Holloway commanded the lead ship. He was calm as he gave the order, his voice steady despite the pounding of his heart. All units, power up weapons. Target the hyperspace entry points. Fire on my mark. The 4 hyperspace disruptors hummed with deadly energy. Patricia Lane had designed them well. Each one could fire only once before burning out completely. But that single shot could change the course of a battle. Mark. 3 of the 4 shots hit their targets perfectly. The Valorian warships that were rushing back to defend the depot had entered hyperspace, thinking themselves safe in those strange dimensions between normal space. They never arrived at their destination. Instead, the tunnels they were traveling through collapsed around them, tearing ships and crews apart in ways that defied normal physics. 8 warships simply ceased to exist. The 4th shot missed. It did not matter. The damage was done. The garrison was crippled, confused, and terrified. Across the subspace bands, the psychic screams of dying Valorians echoed for hours. Those screams would haunt the survivors for the rest of their lives. Derek did not give them time to recover.
Ow.
All ships engaged the battle stations. Target their power cores. Make every shot count. The human vessels were small and fast, darting between the massive structures like wolves attacking elephants. They could not hope to destroy the battle stations with their limited firepower, but they did not need to. Patricia Lane had identified a weakness in the Valorian design. The stations relied on external power feeds from the central depot. Cut those feeds, and the stations would go dark. Nathan Cole led his squadron against the depot itself. His ship, the Revenant, had been rebuilt 3 times since he took command, each time becoming faster and deadlier. He flew it like an extension of his own body, weaving through defensive fire that would have destroyed any normal pilot. Hit the fuel storage, he ordered his squadron. Give them something to remember us by. The explosions lit up the darkness of space like a second sun. Fuel meant for 100 warships burned in seconds, creating a chain reaction that spread through the depot. Secondary explosions tore through the storage bays, destroying everything the Valorians had plundered from human worlds. Admiral Kethris watched from the command center as his supply depot died around him. He could not understand what was happening. Humans had no fleet. Humans had no weapons capable of this destruction. Humans were extinct, and then a message appeared on every screen in the depot. You killed our world. You thought you killed our spirit. You were wrong. The face of Lisa Morgan filled the screens. She was not aboard any of the attacking ships. She was safely hidden at Kepler Station, broadcasting through a series of relays that made her signal impossible to trace. But her eyes burned with cold fire, and her voice carried the weight of 8 billion dead. We are the remnant. We remember everything. We forget nothing. And we are just getting started. The human ships were already withdrawing, slipping away through pre-calculated escape routes before the surviving Valorian forces could organize a response. They left behind only destruction, confusion, and fear. Derek Holloway guided his ship into the safety of hyperspace, allowing himself a small moment of satisfaction. They had lost no vessels. They had killed hundreds of enemies. And most importantly, they had proven that the Dominion was not invincible. The news spread across the galaxy like wildfire. At first, many species did not believe it. Humans attacking a major Valorian installation. Humans winning. It seemed impossible. But the evidence was undeniable. The depot at Theta Carini was gone. And the empire that had ruled unchallenged for 2,000 years had just received its first bloody nose. Admiral Kethris escaped the destruction aboard a shuttle, watching the ruins of his command drift past the viewport. For the first time in his long career, he felt something he had never associated with humans. Fear real. Genuine fear. On Valoria Prime, the Dominion Council met in emergency session. They had expected the human survivors to scatter and die. Instead, they had organized, armed themselves, and struck back with devastating effectiveness. The Council demanded answers. They demanded solutions. They demanded that the human problem be solved once and for all. But solving it was no longer simple. The ghosts had proven they had teeth. And throughout the galaxy, other species were watching, wondering if perhaps the mighty Valorians were not quite as mighty as they had always seemed. The first real victory belonged to humanity. Many more would follow. 2 years had passed since the death of Earth, and the galaxy was changing in ways that no one had expected. The Valorian Dominion, which had ruled without serious challenge for 20 centuries, was bleeding from 1,000 small wounds. And the creatures they had tried to exterminate were responsible for every drop of blood. The Galactic Council met in emergency session for the 4th time that month. Representatives from 100 different species filled the great chamber, their voices rising in argument and accusation. The Valorian ambassador stood alone, trying to defend policies that were becoming harder to justify with each passing day. The human threat has been contained, he insisted. His forearms spread in a gesture of reassurance. Our fleets are hunting down the remaining terrorists. Soon there will be no more attacks. Kethmar Delegate laughed openly. Contained? Your supply convoys are afraid to travel without full military escort. Your outer colonies are demanding protection you cannot provide. Your admirals are losing ships faster than your shipyards can build them. Tell me again how the threat has been contained. The ambassador had no answer. The truth was too obvious to deny. Captain Nathan Cole had become the most feared human in the galaxy. His ship, the Revenant, appeared without warning in Valorian space, struck hard and fast, and vanished before anyone could respond. He had destroyed more enemy vessels than the rest of the Remnant fleet combined. Valorian commanders told stories about him to frighten new recruits, but Nathan was just one of many. The human survivors had proven to be terrifyingly good at a kind of warfare the Dominion had never faced. They did not fight fair battles. They did not follow the ancient rules of engagement that civilized species respected. They attacked without warning, targeted weaknesses instead of strengths, and disappeared before anyone could catch them. Derek. Holloway trained new pilots in hidden bases scattered across neutral space. He taught them everything he knew about ambush tactics, about exploiting enemy overconfidence, about the art of striking where it hurt most and leaving before the enemy could recover. His students were eager learners. They had all lost everything they loved, and that loss had transformed them into something dangerous. On the frozen moon of Ganymede Station, Dr. Patricia Lane continued her work. The hyperspace disruptors had been a success, but they were expensive and difficult to build. She needed something more practical, something that could be mass-produced and distributed to every human ship. The answer came to her in a dream. Gravity mines, she explained to the council. Small devices that can be scattered along shipping routes. When a Valorian ship passes by, the mine activates and creates a localized gravity well. The ship is pulled out of hyperspace and disabled. Then our forces can move in and finish the job. Lisa Morgan studied the designs with growing excitement. How many can we build? Thousands, Patricia replied. The materials are common. The engineering is simple. We can have the first batch ready in 3 months. But Patricia was not finished. Her brilliant mind had been working on something even more ambitious. A computer virus, designed to spread through Valorian ship systems without being detected. It would lie dormant for months or even years doing nothing, attracting no attention. And then, at a signal from human command, it would activate simultaneously on every infected ship, blinding sensors, disrupting communications, and turning the proud Valorian fleet into a collection of helpless targets. We only get one chance with this, Patricia warned. Once they know about it, they will develop countermeasures. We have to save it for the right moment. Lisa nodded slowly. Then we save it. We keep fighting, keep bleeding them, until we are ready to strike at the heart. The remnant fleet was no longer alone. More species were secretly providing aid, driven by old hatred for the Dominion, or by hope that perhaps the galaxy might change. The Kethmari shipyards worked around the clock, building vessels to human specifications. The Orinai shared intelligence gathered by their network of spies. Even the Valorians, the ancient enemies of Valoria, began to pay attention. The humans interest us, a Valorian diplomat told Lisa during a secret meeting. We have fought the Dominion for centuries without success. You have been fighting for 2 years, and you have already achieved more than we did in our entire history. We want to understand how. Lisa considered her answer carefully. We have nothing left to lose, she finally said. Your species has a homeworld, colonies, a future to protect. We have only revenge. That makes us dangerous in ways you cannot imagine. The Valorian studied her with strange, luminous eyes. Perhaps that is exactly what the galaxy needs. On Valoria Prime, the Dominion Council was growing desperate. Their military was stretched thin, trying to protect thousands of light years of territory from an enemy that could strike anywhere at any time. Their colonies were demanding protection they could not provide. Their economy was straining under the cost of constant war, and worst of all, their subject species were beginning to whisper. If humans could survive extinction, perhaps others could too. If humans could fight back against the mighty Dominion, perhaps resistance was not as hopeless as everyone had always believed. In the slave barracks of 100 conquered worlds, beings who had long since given up hope began to dream of freedom. Admiral Cathras, who had once been celebrated as the hero of the human extermination, was now a figure of mockery and shame. He had been given command of the campaign to destroy the remnant, but every strategy he tried failed. The humans always seemed to know where his fleets would be. They always escaped before his trap could close. It was as if they could read his mind. They could not read his mind, of course. But the Orinai spies had infiltrated Valorian command at every level, passing information to human intelligence officers who used it to stay one step ahead. The Dominion was being betrayed by beings they did not even know existed. Lisa Morgan stood on the observation deck of Kepler's station, looking out at the stars. 2 years ago, she had been a simple research commander, content with her quiet life among the stars. Now she was the leader of a movement that was shaking the foundations of galactic civilization. She was tired. They were all tired, but they could not rest, not yet. The war was far from over, and the most dangerous part was still to come. We have enough ships now, Nathan Cole said, joining her at the viewport. We have enough weapons, enough allies, enough intelligence. The question is, what do we do with them? Lisa did not answer immediately. She was thinking about her mother's ring, still held somewhere in Valorian space. She was thinking about the 8 billion voices that had been silenced. She was thinking about all the promises she had made to the dead. "We end it," she finally said. "We take the fight to Valoria Prime itself. We show the galaxy that even the mightiest empire can fall, and we do it in a way that proves we are better than they are." Nathan raised an eyebrow. "Better how?" "We do not kill civilians. We do not destroy their world the way they destroyed ours. We prove that humanity deserves to survive, not because we are the strongest, but because we are the most humane." She turned to face him with determination burning in her gray eyes. "We prove that we have not become the monsters they tried to make us." Nathan was silent for a long moment. Then H. E nodded. "Then let us begin." The Battle of Valoria Prime began with darkness. Every ship in the Dominion home fleet lost sensors simultaneously. 3 years of careful preparation, 3 years of patient virus spreading through captured vessels and corrupted supply shipments, all activated in a single moment. The most powerful military force in the galaxy was suddenly blind and deaf. Unable to see the enemies that were already among them, Admiral Kethra stood on the command deck of his flagship, screaming orders that no one could follow. His screens showed nothing but static. His communications officers reported only silence. Outside the viewports, he could see flashes of weapons fire in the distance, but he could not tell who was shooting at whom. The remnant fleet had arrived. There were only 7 human ships against 300 Valorian warships defending the homeworld. By every logical calculation, it should have been a slaughter. But logic did not account for the virus that had crippled Valorian sensors. Logic did not account for 3 years of planning and preparation. And logic did not account for the burning determination of people who had nothing left to lose. Nathan Cole led the assault on the orbital defense platforms. His squadron of 12 ships dove through the chaos, targeting the massive structures that protected Valoria Prime from attack. The platforms were powerful enough to destroy entire fleets, but they relied on targeting systems that were now useless. Nathan's pilots flew through defensive fire that should have killed them 100 times over, striking at weak points that Patricia Lane had identified months ago, one by one. The platforms went dark. Derek Holloway commanded the attack on the shipyards. These massive facilities had built the fleets that conquered 100 worlds. They had built the ships that destroyed Earth. Now they burned. Their construction bays and manufacturing centers tearing themselves apart under human weapons fire. Lisa, Morgan watched from her flagship. The Promise of Dawn, she had named the ship herself, choosing a title that represented everything she hoped humanity could become. Not destroyers, but builders. Not conquerors, but liberators. Not monsters, but something better. The Valorian home fleet was recovering. 11 critical minutes had passed, and engineers were starting to bypass the corrupted systems. Soon, they would be able to fight back effectively, and then the weight of numbers would tell. 300 ships against 47. Even with surprise on their side, the humans could not win a fair battle. Lisa did not intend to fight a fair battle. "Open a channel," she ordered. "Broadcast on all frequencies. Make sure every being on Valoria Prime can see and hear this." Her communications officer worked quickly, and within moments, Lisa's face appeared on every screen across the entire planet. In government buildings and private homes, in military installations and civilian shelters, billions of Valorians stopped what they were doing and watched. 3 years ago, "You murdered our world without warning or provocation," Lisa said. Her voice was calm and steady, carrying the weight of everything she had lost and everything she had fought for. "You expected us to die quietly. You expected us to fade into history like so many species before us. You were wrong." She paused, letting the words sink in across an entire civilization. Instead, we learned. We adapted. We survived. Today, we stand above your homeworld with weapons that could end your civilization as easily as you ended ours. Our ships carry enough firepower to burn every city on your planet to ash. We could give you the same death you gave us. In the command centers of the Valorian military, officers watched with growing horror. They had seen what human weapons could do. They knew this was not an empty threat. We choose not to. The words hung in the silence. We're not what you tried to make us. We will not become the monsters you expected. We did not survive genocide so that we could commit genocide in return. That is not who we are. That is not who we will ever be. Lisa leaned forward, her gray eyes burning with intensity. But know this, the galaxy is watching. Every species you have conquered, every world you have threatened, every being you have oppressed is watching what happens today. They are waiting to see whether humans are worthy of survival. And they are waiting to see whether the mighty Valorian Dominion can be brought to its knees. She stood straight, her voice carrying the authority of a leader who had earned every shred of respect she commanded. The human race declares its right to exist. Any further aggression against our people will be met with overwhelming response. We have weapons you cannot defend against and the will to use them, but we prefer peace. We prefer to build rather than destroy. We prefer to be neighbors rather than enemies. Lisa looked directly into the camera, speaking now not just to the Valorians, but to every species in the galaxy who might be watching. The choice is yours. Make it wisely. The transmission ended. For a long moment, nothing happened. The Valorian fleet hung motionless in space, their sensors slowly coming back online. They could see the human ships now, small and vulnerable, looking against the massive Valorian warships. They could see that the humans were outnumbered almost 7-1, and they could see the orbital platforms burning, the shipyards in ruins, and the promise of what would happen if they chose to fight. Admiral Kethris gave the order to stand down. The Valorian government surrendered within hours. The terms were harsh but fair. Reparations for the destroyed human colonies. Recognition of human sovereignty over whatever worlds they chose to settle. The return of all human prisoners and stolen property. And most importantly, a seat for humanity on the Galactic Council. With full voting rights and equal standing, Lisa Morgan received her mother's ring 3 days later, delivered by a Valorian officer who could not meet her eyes. She held it in her palm for a long moment, remembering the woman who had worn it, remembering the world that was gone forever. Then she put it on her finger and went back to work. The galaxy changed faster than anyone had expected. The Valorian Dominion, weakened by years of fighting and the humiliation of their surrender, began to collapse from within. Species they had conquered for centuries rose up in revolt, inspired by the human example. Within 5 years, the Dominion would be nothing more than a memory, placed by a new federation of free worlds, humanity rebuilt. They established their capital on a world they named New Hope. A beautiful planet with blue oceans and green continents that reminded them of Earth. The founding documents of their new government enshrined a simple principle that Lisa Morgan herself had written. Never again would they allow any species to face extinction alone. The Kethmari built a memorial to Earth in the heart of their own capital city. The Orii emerged from the shadows and established formal diplomatic relations with the human government. Even the proud Valorians, who had fought the Dominion for centuries without success, acknowledged that humans had accomplished something they never could, and across the galaxy, beings who had once dismissed humanity as dangerous upstarts began to speak of them with something new in their voices. Respect, Lisa. Morgan lived to see the completion of New Hope's first great city. She walked through streets filled with humans and aliens alike, watching children play who would never know the fear she had lived with. She was old now, her hair fully gray, her body tired from decades of struggle, but she was content. The galaxy had tried to erase humanity from existence. Instead, they had awakened something that would reshape the stars forever. They had created a species that knew the value of survival, the cost of extinction, the importance of mercy. In the end, the Valorians had been right about one thing. Humans were dangerous. But not in the way they had feared. Humans were dangerous because they refused to accept the impossible. They were dangerous because they turned suffering into strength. They were dangerous because they chose to be better than their enemies, even when revenge would have been easier. And they were dangerous because, when pushed to the edge of annihilation, they discovered they could push back harder than anyone had ever imagined. The galaxy trembled, and humanity endured.